One more time for the good brother, Daryl Clausell.
Got me hungry and stuff up here, man. Golly. Next speaker I want to bring to the stage is a person that I just got the opportunity to meet, and hopefully we get to know each other more, collaborate, and grow longer. And I can't wait for everybody in the community in the Valley to understand the importance of having this woman as a part of our community. Really is. So without any further ado, the Special Assistant to the President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at West Liberty University, Dr. Monique Akassi.
Thank you. I'm a little short, so let's see if I can adjust this. Okay. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it, Mr. Ron Scott. I'm forever grateful to you, to Mayor Glenn Elliott and his lovely family that's here today, to President Jerry Moore II, President Daryl Clausell, Reverend Twyla Davis, and my husband, Dr. Clement Akassi of Howard University. Thank you all for being here today. A call for unity, the crucial role that honesty plays, and the importance of Juneteenth in 2022. Today's presentation, I won't hold you long, but it is in memory of my great-great-great-grandfather, Mr. Charlie Smith, one of the oldest surviving slaves that lived to be, according to my grandfather, 137 years old. He was kidnapped in Liberia at age 12 and sold into slavery in Louisiana. He died a month after I was born on October 5th, 1979. And though he also celebrated Juneteenth before it even became the 11th federal holiday, there were still concerns regarding unity, being treated equally, equitable, and obtaining economic power. While there were celebrations about freedom, one is at a serious disadvantage if one does not have an identity. So as the mayor and the president had talked about so eloquently, I think that we're truly in conversation, and we didn't even have any meetings before this, but I think it's in divine order. So there are some serious disadvantages if we don't know who we are. This lays the foundation, let alone the blueprint, towards surviving and thriving after being set free. So a lot has transpired in American history for African Americans since the infamous declaration by General Gordon Granger in the headquarters of the District of Galveston, Texas on June 19, 1865. And yet African Americans still have 157 years later many rivers to cross on this celebration of Juneteenth, a portmanteau of the 19th day of June. To date, there are still many controversial issues regarding Juneteenth, whether or not it should be celebrated, acknowledged, and or observed. But today, in seeing all of our beautiful brothers and sisters, black, white, brown, yellow, the entire rainbow, this is what it's all about today: unity, and a call for unity. Now, we know about the recent protests that we've had, the Black Lives Matter and the Say Her Name, and the Blue Lives Matter and the All Lives Matter, and everything in between. Okay, we know about the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Aubrey Ahmaud, Rayshard Brooks, and the list goes on. Juneteenth has received more awareness nationwide as a plethora of companies, communities, and states push for Juneteenth to be recognized as a federal holiday due to a lot of recent events that have happened in our beloved country. However, change is never easy, and we can't do it alone. It always comes with resistance. A few years ago, there was a councilman, Thomas Dunn, for example, from Leesburg, Virginia, and I speak about that because I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, but I also have residents in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and also West Liberty, and on our beautiful hilltop. But Thomas Dunn from Leesburg, Virginia, some of you know this story, a few years ago, had faced a call for resignation after refusing to sign a Juneteenth proclamation to declare posting a disturbing message regarding Juneteenth. The Leesburg Town Council nevertheless successfully passed a resolution proclamation to proclaim June 19th as Juneteenth to acknowledge the celebration in African American history as well as our dark history as well. He wrote on the signature line, quote, "This is a celebration. Lynchings are not," end of quote. Now, of course, society will not celebrate lynchings, but rather acknowledge and show empathy to those who lost their lives to lynchings in America. The congressman, nevertheless, his refusal to sign the proclamation and using the excuse regarding acknowledging a lynching in the holiday as his reason not to sign what would have been a historic unanimous vote a couple years ago did not happen at that time due to unwillingness to unite. To be honest, for a call for unity begins with being truthful, honest, a sense of humility and empathy. But together, our fellow American citizens, we did not stop. We continue to push the needle towards change. And because of that, and I also thank our Governor Jim Justice as well for acknowledging in the news on Friday that indeed Juneteenth is even our state holiday here in our beloved state of West Virginia. And we also know that tomorrow will mark West Virginia Day. So we have a lot to celebrate here in West Virginia. Moving forward, on July 19th, 1865, when Major General Gordon Granger delivered the most impactful annual celebration of emancipation for slavery in the U.S., when he traveled to Texas, the Emancipation Proclamation ended slavery in the Confederacy 2.5 years before June 19, 1865, which was approximately about 200,000 black men that had enlisted in the fight. But unfortunately, there were people of Galveston, Texas, that were the very last city and state to receive the news that slavery was officially over. So you still had some slaves that were still enslaved after the fact. So it should be noted also that the Civil War, which lasted for 4 years, as we know, was a war that ended slavery, and the purpose for the battle was to end slavery, but the war did not end racism and systemic racism, and we still fight for that today, which African Americans continue to fight for, and we lean on each other with all of our sisters and brothers, black, white, brown, and yellow, 155 plus years later on this date. The North won the war physically, but the South won the war psychologically and systemically to keep racism alive that we have to continue to dismantle. So as we reflect on this holiday, we must ask ourselves, how far have we really come as a country since the Civil War? How far have we really come since June 19, 1865? According to Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. at Harvard University, he proclaims that that's not all that plagued the extreme western edge of the former Confederate states. Since the capture of New Orleans in 1862, slave owners in Mississippi, Louisiana, and other points east had been migrating to Texas to escape the Union Army's reach. And moreover, as Leon Litwick explains in his infamous book, Been in the Storm So Long, The Aftermath of Slavery, He states, in a hurried reenactment of the original Middle Passage, more than 150,000 slaves had made the track west. And as one former slave explained after the Emancipation Proclamation in Litwack's How Free is Free, she says, I used to think if I could be free, I should be the happiest woman. And this was a young Mississippi woman that recalled, but when my master come to me and says, Lizzie, you are free, it seems like I was in a kind of daze. And when I would wake up in the morning, I would think to myself, is I free? Hasn't I got to get up before daylight and go into the field and work? So now we're getting into the psychological impact of it. So although slaves were free now, as we see, they did not have the blueprint nor the networks to know how to survive. And as Dr. Joy DeGruy calls it, suffering now from post-traumatic slave syndrome and the aftermath. So even moving forward today and reflecting on the plethora of donations from Fortune 500 companies, and the list goes on, to investments into schools and businesses and our people, that's good, but one can receive all the donations in the world, but if African Americans are not accepted, included, and felt a sense of belonging, if African Americans are not shown the ways to survive, to thrive, to build and advance in the United States of America, it will be equivalent to African American slaves being free with no knowledge of how to sustain and advance from generation to generation, which we see today. So I say all of this because when African Americans reflect on Juneteenth and the present, it's not just a time for us to reflect on how the old Negro spiritual professed, we shall overcome, or my soul looks back and wonder how I got over, but rather focus on a Sankofa movement where we look back as we make strategic plans to move forward towards becoming de-alienated as, quote, a problem in one's own country, end of quote, as W.E.B. Du Bois once eloquently proclaimed. Movements towards planning, systemic advancement. I'm talking about economic building, the resurrection of building, right? And continuing acts of demanding what's owed, okay? And so one may wonder, why did it take almost 2 centuries to finally have Juneteenth recognized as a federal holiday? Well, the answer was simple. Look at your devices. Look at those $1,000 phones you have. Mobile journalism. Rodney King, that's all I gotta say. Going all the way back to Rodney King, March 3rd, 1991 in Los Angeles, all the way up to George Floyd, and the list goes on. Those mobile journalisms, those phones that you have, that's why Juneteenth is a federal holiday today. You did it. We did it. We made this happen. And you need to give yourself a round of applause for that in itself. You did it. So therefore, in good faith, our beloved country, the United States of America, the trailblazer, the greatest country in the world, we are taking small efforts towards deconstructing and reconstructing our past by embarking on the role that honesty plays in our world today. Nobody's perfect, but we are making those strides, and we're the role model for many. Indeed, by making Juneteenth an official holiday, this serves as a movement towards unity and a powerful symbol of progress towards inclusion. And then although some may argue that Juneteenth should not be an official holiday due to the rhetoric of the continuation of division, and that is not necessary when America has the 4th of July as a holiday celebrating all Americans and the birth of the USA, the fact is that all were not free in 1776. It took almost another century later, 89 years plus, for African Americans to be included and recognized as free in the land of the free. And yet today, while slavery ended, the lynchings, the systemic racism, the domestic terrorism continues. But while so much has transpired since President Lincoln issued the signed Emancipation Proclamation declaring that all persons held as slaves within the rebellion states are and henceforth shall be free, in the words of the late great President Lincoln on January 1st, 1863, it would not be acknowledged completely until over 2.5 years later by the final state, Texas. So as we celebrate today with family, friends, and the global communities at large through parades, barbecues, and unity, let us all aim to begin preparing for effective planning and strategies towards joining us on the road that honesty plays to unite and build together. Our ancestors, all of our ancestors, including my beloved great-great-great-grandfather, Mr. Charlie Smith, fought a long, hard battle to end physical slavery. But now it is up to this generation, our children's children, to accept the past torch and work together towards breaking down the psychological and invisible barriers that attempt to divide us and turn a cheek to our dark past. I know it's tough, my fellow Americans. I know it's tough to look back as we move forward, as Sankofa declares. But we must, if we are ever to move the needle forward towards unification, forgiveness, and rising together as one nation under God with liberty and justice for all, as our national anthem so eloquently proclaims. On this 157th anniversary and closing of Juneteenth, because our ancestors were not free in 1776, there remains a small percentage of African Americans who choose not to celebrate the 4th of July. We don't talk about that, but we're going to talk about it today. Right. But as the late, great Frederick Douglass revealed in his infamous speech, "What to the slave is the 4th of July," quote, "a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim," end of quote. Yes, indeed, my brothers and sisters, there was and still remains open wounds from the past. However, we can start today, this very hour, this very minute, with a moment of truth and the role that honesty plays in moving towards a call for acknowledgement, a call for forgiveness, a call for unity. It was the lyrical genius, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, who unveiled the world in his Souls for Black Folk. This dilemma that African Americans have struggled with for centuries, the double consciousness. Du Bois states poignantly in his infamous words, "It is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others. One ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideas in one dark body whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder." His prophetic words echo today. And today, fellow Americans, I call for unity with these two unreconciled strivings that Du Bois talks about. And indeed, we can celebrate our heritage and what our ancestors, including my great-great-grandfather, went through in order for us to be standing here today, along with our white, yellow, brown, and black brothers and sisters. We can celebrate Juneteenth unapologetically with dignity and pride, as our ancestors have lent us their brave shoulders to climb on top and see a little further and go a little higher. We can embrace our identities, our roots, and our foundations as American people united today from our diverse, beautiful backgrounds, as we also prepare to celebrate the 4th of July as well. Oh, yes, we can. Indeed, as Alice Walker prophetically proclaimed, we are the ones we have been waiting for. No excuses today. As the popular saying goes, we are our ancestors' wildest dreams come true. We come from a bloodline of those who chose to survive. What we do today will have an impact on our children's children for generations to come. The veil is officially lifted, West Virginia. Today, we finally have a true holiday that reveals and demonstrates the strides and efforts that our nation continues to make towards progress, change, unity, equality, brotherly and sisterly love. Juneteenth and the crucial role that honesty plays in our American history is summed up in one final statement, as I call on the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who proclaims, "If the cruelties of slavery could not stop us, the opposition we now face will surely fail, because the goal of America is freedom. Abused and scorned though we may be, our destiny is tied up with America's destiny. Our destiny is your destiny, and together I call for unity." Thank you.
Very good. Very powerful.
Thank you.
No, I'll let y'all get done. Y'all can get done.
One more time for the good doctor.